The Forgotten Truth, Hook and Suspense. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, buried for thousands of years, lay a secret, one that could change everything humanity thought it knew about its past. The year was 2045, and a team of archaeologists and scientists were conducting a routine excavation in an ancient underground cavern. They had stumbled across something extraordinary, something far beyond the usual fossilized remains of early human civilizations. Dr. Emily Carter, the lead scientist, carefully examined the object in front of her. It was a smooth metallic disc, no larger than a dinner plate, but unlike anything she had ever seen. The surface shimmered with strange patterns, glowing faintly as if it were alive. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached for the disc, her mind racing with the possibilities. This wasn't just a piece of ancient technology. It was something much older, something far more significant. "What do you think it is, Emily?" asked Dr. Thomas James, a fellow archaeologist, as he peered over her shoulder. His voice was thick with curiosity, mixed with a hint of caution. "I don't know, but this—" Emily paused, her voice quiet with awe. "This is not from Earth." The team gathered around the artifact, their eyes wide with disbelief. The disc had strange symbols engraved all over it, ones that no one could recognize. They didn't belong to any known ancient civilization. Not Egyptian, not Sumerian, not even Mayan. These symbols seemed to be from a language that had never been seen on Earth before. "This has to be the find of the century," Thomas said, trying to make sense of what they were looking at. "We need to take this back to the lab," Emily replied, her mind already racing with questions. She carefully placed the disc into a protective case, her mind already running through the possibilities. If this was some kind of alien artifact, it could change everything humanity understood about its place in the universe. Back at their research facility, they placed the disc under a microscope. Hours passed as they examined the symbols, trying to decode their meaning. But despite their best efforts, nothing seemed to make sense. Then, just as they were about to give up for the night, something unexpected happened. The disc, sitting on the table, began to hum softly. The low vibration rattled through the room, and Emily gasped. It's activating." Before anyone could react, the disc released a burst of bright, blinding light. The entire lab was flooded with energy, the lights flickering, and a strange, eerie noise filled the air, as if a long-forgotten machine was waking up from a deep slumber. "What is happening?" Thomas shouted, backing away from the table. "I don't know," Emily said, her heart pounding in her chest. She could barely keep her eyes open as the light grew brighter, enveloping the room. But as the light suddenly dimmed, it left behind something that no one could have ever expected. A holographic image appeared in the air before them, slowly coming into focus. It was a star map, one showing the entire galaxy. But what caught their attention was not the map itself, but the symbols that began to emerge around it, symbols identical to the ones on the disc. They slowly shifted and moved, forming an intricate pattern, like a puzzle that was just beginning to reveal itself. This is impossible," Thomas whispered, his eyes wide with fear. "This map, it's not just from Earth. It's from the entire galaxy. And those symbols, they're some kind of language." Emily stared at the hologram in awe, feeling the deep, unsettling sense of something larger unfolding before her. As the symbols shifted, a message began to take form, its meaning clear despite the strange language. "We were the elders. You are the heirs. The galaxy has forgotten us, but we have not forgotten you." The words burned into her mind, and the room fell silent as the impact of the message set in. The artifact wasn't just a piece of alien technology. It was a message from Earth's ancient past, from a civilization long forgotten. A civilization that had once ruled the galaxy. But the message didn't stop there. As the final words appeared, the hologram flickered again and began to fade, but not before a final image emerged. A powerful, glowing structure, an ancient city, larger than anything on Earth. It was a city built not on Earth itself, but somewhere out in the stars. And the final image showed a massive weapon, hidden deep beneath the city, surrounded by the same symbols. An empire, Emily whispered in disbelief. An ancient empire, from Earth. But why? Why was it hidden? Before anyone could answer, the lab lights flickered again, and the humming sound from earlier returned, this time louder and more intense. The artifact began to glow once more, and a deep rumble filled the room. It felt as though the Earth itself was reacting to what had just been uncovered. The answers lay hidden in the stars. But as the team stared at the map, something else began to dawn on them. The galaxy was not as peaceful as it seemed. There were others out there who knew of the elders, who had been searching for their hidden legacy. And now that they had found it, everything was about to change. Emily's heart raced. There was no turning back. The forgotten truth had been awakened. The galaxy's ancient masters were not a myth. They were real. And Earth was no longer just another planet in the galaxy. It was the key to an ancient power, one that could reshape the future of all life in the universe. A glimpse into the past. The room was still, but the silence was thick with uncertainty. The team stared at the fading hologram, their minds struggling to process what they had just seen. Emily's heart raced, her thoughts tangled in the mystery of the message. They had uncovered more than they ever expected, and now they had to understand what it meant. "Emily," Thomas whispered, his voice shaky. Do you think this is real?" "I don't know," she answered softly, her eyes still fixed on the dimming hologram. "But it's not just some ancient myth. Whoever the elders were, they were real, and they were connected to Earth." The lab was filled with tension. The strange glowing symbols from the disk had disappeared, leaving only the galaxy map. But the team knew that the next step wasn't to sit and wait. They had just unlocked a door to something far greater than they had imagined. "We need to trace where the map leads," Emily said, turning to the others. "There must be a place where these symbols originate. We need to find it." With little more than the star map and a handful of clues, the team set to work. The map showed a constellation they didn't recognize, one that wasn't marked in any modern star charts. After hours of research, they identified it. It was located in a distant part of the galaxy, far beyond any human exploration. And it wasn't just a random point in space. It was connected to the hidden city from the hologram. "This is incredible," said Dr. Lily Turner, the team's linguist. She had spent the past hours examining the symbols again. "These symbols, they're not just a language. They're a code. A map, yes, but also something more. Instructions, maybe. A warning." "Warning?" Emily asked, raising an eyebrow. Lily nodded. "The message. It speaks of the galaxy forgetting the elders. What if they weren't just lost? What if they left for a reason? And this weapon they showed us, it could be dangerous." "We don't know if that's true," Thomas said, "but we can't ignore it. We need to go to that location on the map. If the elders left something behind, maybe it can explain everything." It wasn't long before the team realized there was no turning back. The decision was made. They would track the map's coordinates and travel as far as they could into the galaxy to find the ancient city. As they prepared for their journey, doubts and excitement mixed in the air. None of them knew what they would find. But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the verge of uncovering something so monumental it could alter the course of history. The ship was ready. With all the necessary equipment loaded and the star map set, they made their way to the launch bay. Emily stood at the helm, staring at the stars, the faint light of Earth's moon fading behind them. The hum of the engines filled the air as they left their planet behind. "We're heading into the unknown," Emily said softly, more to herself than anyone else. "But the truth is out there, and we'll find it." The ship sped away from Earth, the stars becoming streaks of light as they passed. The crew worked tirelessly as they followed the star map, adjusting their course and searching for signs of the ancient city. Days turned into weeks as they traveled deeper into uncharted space, but they knew they were getting closer. Then, one day, the sensors picked up something. "There," Thomas exclaimed, pointing at the display. "We found it." Ahead of them, a massive structure appeared on the ship's radar. It wasn't a star, or a planet, or anything they had seen before. It was a colossal, ring-shaped object, floating in space like a giant, abandoned artifact. As they got closer, they could see it wasn't just a structure, it was a city. The city of the Elders. But as the ship approached, something began to feel wrong. The closer they got, the more the ship's systems started to malfunction. The lights flickered, and strange signals began to flood their communications system. Emily's stomach tightened as she looked out at the vast city ahead of them. "We need to be careful," Emily said, her voice steady but filled with unease. "We don't know what we're walking into." The city loomed larger as they approached, its surface covered in strange, ancient symbols that matched the ones from the disk. It looked desolate, yet somehow alive, almost like it had been waiting for someone to return. But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. Something was waiting. They landed at the edge of the city, the ship's engines whirring to a stop. The crew gathered their gear and stepped out into the dusty, empty streets. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding, and the silence was unnerving. "This place, it feels like a ghost town," Thomas said, his voice low as he looked around. "Where is everyone?" Emily scanned the area, her mind racing. The hologram had shown a thriving city, filled with life. But now it seemed deserted. She couldn't understand it. The Elders were supposed to be here, or at least some trace of them. A crackling sound echoed in the distance. Emily's heart skipped a beat. "Did you hear that?" she asked. Before anyone could answer, the ground beneath their feet trembled. A deep rumble, as if the city itself was waking up. Something had been hidden here, something powerful. But the team had no idea how dangerous it would be to awaken it. The hidden legacy revealed. The ground trembled beneath their feet as the team stood in the middle of the ancient city. The air was thick with dust, and the silence was deafening. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. There was something strange about this place, something ancient and powerful. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, though there was no one around. "Stay alert," Emily instructed her team, trying to keep her voice steady despite the unease that gnawed at her. "We need to find out what this place was." As they walked deeper into the city, they noticed the structures. Massive stone buildings, some in ruins, others still standing tall but covered in strange, glowing symbols. It looked like a place of incredible importance, yet its emptiness suggested it had been abandoned long ago. The team made their way toward a central building that stood taller than the others. Its walls were etched with the same symbols they had seen in the hologram. This building had to be significant. "Look at these markings," said Dr. Liley Turner, studying the walls. "This is a temple, or perhaps a throne room." The symbols seemed to be some kind of sacred script. "Whatever it is, it's important," Thomas said, his voice tight with excitement. "We need to get inside." The team carefully approached the entrance. As Emily reached out to touch the door, it slid open with a soft, mechanical hiss. The air inside was cool, and the dim light from the outside filtered through cracks in the stone. The walls were covered in murals, ancient depictions of strange beings, their forms tall and regal, dressed in ornate armor, with their hands raised as if wielding unimaginable power. "This is it," Emily said quietly, her heart racing. "This must be the heart of the Elders' civilization." They moved deeper into the chamber, and as they did, the temperature seemed to drop. The walls began to glow faintly, and a low hum filled the air. At the far end of the room, on a raised platform, stood an object, an enormous spherical device, much like the one they had found back on Earth. But this one was far more intricate, with glowing veins of light running across its surface. Emily stepped forward, her hands trembling as she examined it. The disk they had uncovered back on Earth had been just a small piece of this puzzle. But this This was the core. This was the key to the Elder's power. "Do you think it's safe to touch?" Thomas asked, his voice low. There was a hint of fear in his eyes. "I have to try," Emily said, her voice firm despite the uncertainty in her heart. She reached out and gently touched the device. Immediately, the room was filled with blinding light. The hum grew louder, and the walls seemed to shift, revealing new symbols, more advanced and complex than any they had seen before. The light flickered, and a projection appeared in the center of the room. It was another hologram, much like the one from Earth, but this one was different. It was a record, a message. The image of a tall, regal figure appeared before them. He was humanoid, with striking features, dressed in a flowing robe, and his eyes glowed with an eerie light. He spoke in a language no one understood, but as he spoke, the symbols on the walls translated his words. "We, the Elders, were the first, the masters of the galaxy. We forged peace, built empires, and protected the cosmos. But we were betrayed. Our own creations turned against us. We sealed ourselves away to wait for a time when our legacy could be restored. Earth, our birthplace, will rise again as the center of the universe. But the weapon must not fall into the wrong hands." The projection flickered, then went dark. Emily stood frozen, staring at the place where the figure had been. The weight of his words hung in the air like a dense fog. "The weapon," Emily whispered, her mind racing. "It's real. And it's here." The team exchanged nervous glances, their initial excitement now clouded by fear. If the Elders had left behind a weapon capable of altering the balance of the entire galaxy, what kind of power was hidden in this city? And who else might be searching for it? "We need to find the weapon," Emily said, her voice steady despite the fear gripping her heart. "It's the key to everything." But just as she turned to lead the way, the ground shook again. The rumble was more intense this time, as if the city itself was reacting to their presence. The walls began to tremble, and dust fell from the ceiling. "We've triggered something," Thomas said, his voice tight with panic. "We need to get out of here." "No," Emily said firmly. "We need to understand this. We can't leave now. We have to find the weapon before someone else does." As the team pressed on, the city seemed to come alive, the walls shifting, and new paths revealing themselves. But with each step forward, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. Someone, or something, was here with them, and it was waiting for them to uncover the hidden power of the Elders. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the chamber. A massive door at the far end of the room slammed open, and a group of armored beings appeared, alien soldiers, with glowing eyes and weapons drawn. They weren't human. They were part of something far older, something tied to the Elders' legacy. "We knew you would come," one of them said in a cold, metallic voice. "But you are too late. The weapon is already ours." The team stood frozen, realizing they were not alone. They had been followed. And now, they were facing an enemy as ancient and powerful as the civilization they had uncovered. Emily's heart raced. The battle for the Elders' legacy had just begun, and Earth's hidden power was about to be tested. Echoes of the past. The armored figures stepped into the chamber with a chilling precision. Their movements were calculated, methodical, as if they had been guarding this city for centuries. The leader, a tall, imposing figure, took a step forward, his glowing eyes fixed on Emily and her team. "We knew you would come," the leader's voice echoed, cold and mechanical. "The Elders' legacy is ours to claim." Emily's heart pounded in her chest. These were not just explorers like them. These beings were soldiers, and they were here for the weapon, the ancient force hidden in the city that the Elders had left behind. She had to act quickly. There was no time to waste. "What do you want?" Emily demanded, trying to steady her voice. "Why are you here?" The soldier's gaze flickered, his eyes narrowing. "We are the Keepers. We were once the Elders' protectors. But when the galaxy turned against them, we were cast aside, left to wait for their return. You have awakened what was meant to stay dormant. You're not the elders, Thomas said, his voice shaking with a mix of fear and disbelief. Who are you? We are their creations, their most loyal soldiers, the keeper replied, his voice dripping with disdain. You have no understanding of what you have discovered. The weapon is far too powerful for anyone, let alone you. Emily's mind raced. The keepers were not just guardians. They were tied to the elders' power. If they could control the weapon, the galaxy would fall under their rule once more. We can't let you have it, Emily said firmly, her eyes darting to the rest of the team. They were outnumbered, but they couldn't let the keepers take control of Earth's legacy. Not without a fight. The team backed up slowly, ready to defend themselves. The glowing symbols on the walls seemed to pulse with energy, as if the city itself was alive, reacting to the confrontation. A low hum filled the air, and the walls shook as if the very foundation of the city was warning them of impending danger. The weapon is ours, the keeper continued, stepping closer. You have no idea what you are facing. If you stand in our way, you will not survive. Emily exchanged a glance with her team. She knew they had to act fast. The keeper's words felt like a death sentence, but they couldn't let fear stop them. They had already uncovered a hidden legacy, a legacy that could change everything about humanity's place in the galaxy. The weapon had to be protected. We need to stop them, Emily whispered, rallying her team. We can't let them take the weapon. It's too dangerous. Just as the keeper raised his weapon, a sharp, crackling sound filled the room. The air seemed to shift, and the ground trembled once more. The entire chamber vibrated, as if something massive was awakening beneath them. The walls groaned, and the hum grew louder. What's happening? Lily cried out, her voice tinged with fear. Emily's eyes widened in realization. It's the weapon. We triggered it. It's activating. The keeper snarled, his weapon raised high. But before he could strike, a massive burst of energy shot from the center of the room. The spherical device they had uncovered earlier flared with blinding light, and the entire chamber seemed to come alive with power. The keepers staggered back, shielding their eyes from the intense glow. We must leave, the keeper hissed, his voice filled with panic. The weapon is not meant for you. Emily, however, stood firm. She could feel the power pulsing from the device, something ancient, something dangerous. But it was also beautiful, mesmerizing. She had to understand it. She had to control it. Stay back, Emily shouted, raising her hand as if to hold the keepers off. We can figure this out. We don't have to fight. But the keepers wouldn't listen. They advanced, weapons ready. The air crackled with tension, and the room grew colder by the second. Just as the first keeper lunged forward, a brilliant flash of light filled the room. The weapon in the center of the chamber erupted with a wave of energy that sent shockwaves through the walls. The keepers were thrown back, crashing into the walls with a force that left them sprawled on the floor, stunned and disoriented. Emily and her team took cover, their ears ringing from the explosion of sound. The light dimmed, and the hum of the weapon slowly faded. The room was silent once more, except for the low groaning of the walls. Are they gone? Thomas asked, his voice shaking. Emily cautiously peeked out from behind the cover. The keepers were still on the ground, unmoving. The weapon had incapacitated them, but they weren't dead. They were alive, just unconscious for now. We need to get to the weapon, Emily said, her voice determined, before they wake up and try again. Lily nodded. But how do we stop this thing from causing more destruction? We don't even know what it can do. Emily moved closer to the device, her heart pounding. The light had faded, but the power within it still surged beneath the surface. She could feel it, like an electric current running through her body. She reached out, placing her hand on the smooth, glowing surface of the device. Suddenly, a voice echoed in her mind. It was not spoken aloud, but it was clear and undeniable. You are the heir. You are the chosen one. The weapon will follow your command. Use it wisely. Emily recoiled slightly, stunned by the voice that filled her thoughts. It wasn't human. It wasn't even something she could comprehend. But it was there, and it was guiding her. The weapon. It's connected to me, Emily whispered, a realization dawning on her. The holographic figure of the elder from earlier appeared once more, flickering above the device. You are the last of your kind, chosen to wield the power of the elders. Use it wisely, for the galaxy is on the edge of war. If you fail, everything will be lost. Emily took a deep breath, the weight of her responsibility crashing down on her. She was no longer just a scientist. She was now the protector of the galaxy's most ancient weapon. And the future of Earth, and perhaps the universe, was in her hands. The fight was far from over. The Keepers would not give up. And there were others out there, far more dangerous, who would do anything to claim the weapon for themselves. But Emily had made a choice. She would fight to protect it, no matter the cost. The galaxy's ancient past had returned, and with it, the power to reshape the future, unveiling the Master's power. The echoes of the ancient message still rang in Emily's mind. As she stood before the ancient weapon, she could feel the weight of its power, not just physically, but emotionally, like an old, forgotten legacy that was now hers to bear. The air around the device shimmered with energy, the room now filled with an overwhelming sense of gravity. She wasn't just standing in a ruined city anymore. She was standing in the heart of the galaxy's lost history, the key to Earth's ancient rule. The Keepers were still unconscious, but Emily knew it wouldn't be long before they regained their senses. The weapon had incapacitated them for now, but she couldn't count on it doing so again. She had no idea how to control the weapon, but the voice, the Elder's voice, had called her the Chosen One. Her thoughts were interrupted by Thomas, who had approached her cautiously. "Emily, what exactly is going on?" Thomas asked, his face pale. "We're standing in the middle of an ancient battlefield, and the weapons, it's alive. It's speaking to you." "I don't know," Emily said, shaking her head slowly. "But I think it's calling to me." The elder who spoke, he said the weapon would follow my command. Lily, who had been nervously scanning the room, stepped forward as well. "But what does that mean? How do we know it's not just going to destroy everything in its path?" Emily bit her lip, unsure of the answer. But one thing was certain: whatever this weapon was, it wasn't meant for just anyone to control. She could feel the weight of the responsibility settling over her shoulders, and it terrified her. "We need to understand what we're dealing with," she said. "We don't know what this weapon can do yet, but if we're going to survive, we have to figure it out fast." The rumbling sound of the Keepers beginning to stir brought them all back to the present. Their time was running out. Emily glanced at her team, and they knew what needed to be done. The weapon couldn't fall into the wrong hands. If the Keepers regained consciousness, they would be back on their feet and ready to take control once more. Emily had to find a way to stop them, and she had to act now. She approached the spherical device again, hesitating for only a second before reaching out once more. The moment her fingers brushed against the surface, a surge of energy pulsed through her entire body. The room went still for a brief moment. Then, as if in response to her touch, a series of holographic symbols appeared in the air, displaying ancient diagrams of star systems, maps, and complex energy grids. The weapon was no longer just a dormant force. It was alive with purpose, connected to something much larger than any of them could comprehend. The voice of the elder spoke again, but this time it was more clear, more direct. "You have unlocked the power. The weapon is yours to command. But know this: the galaxy will not forgive your actions lightly. There are those who will seek to destroy you and your people, just as they destroyed us. The weapon must never fall into the hands of those who would misuse it." Emily's breath caught in her throat. She understood now. This weapon wasn't just a tool for destruction. It was a key to something far more dangerous. If it fell into the wrong hands, it could plunge the galaxy back into chaos. "I think I understand," Emily said, her voice trembling. "This weapon is not just for us. It's a force that holds the balance of the entire galaxy. The Elders built it to protect the galaxy from those who would destroy it. But it can also destroy everything if it's misused." The room seemed to shift with energy as the realization hit them all. The Keepers were protectors, yes, but they were also soldiers who had been waiting for the return of the weapon. They weren't the only ones who knew about the weapon's power. If the wrong people, beings who were even older and more powerful than the Keepers, found out that the weapon had been activated, they would stop at nothing to control it. The galaxy's fragile peace would collapse in an instant. "We need to keep it from falling into their hands," Thomas said, his voice urgent. Lily nodded. "But how? We don't know how to control it." "The weapon is responding to you, Emily, but what if it gets out of hand?" Emily closed her eyes, focusing on the energy around her. She could feel the pulse of the weapon, as though it were part of her now. The choice she made now would define the future of Earth and the galaxy. She stepped back from the weapon, trying to steady her breath. She had to think clearly. They didn't have the luxury of time. The Keepers would soon awaken, and they weren't the only threat. There were others, ancient and dangerous, who had been waiting for this moment. If they learned that the weapon was active, they would come, and they wouldn't stop until it was under their control. The voice spoke again, but this time it was softer, almost sympathetic. "The power of the Elders is yours to command, but do not let it consume you. The weapon will obey, but only if your heart remains true." Emily's pulse quickened. She understood what the Elder meant. The weapon could be controlled, but only by someone who was pure of heart and clear of purpose. It was a force that would reflect her will, and if her intentions were wrong, it would destroy her. With a deep breath, Emily turned to her team. "We need to secure this place. We can't let the Keepers or anyone else find out what we've uncovered. We need to find a way to shut it down, at least for now. It's too dangerous to let it be used." The rumble of the Keepers stirring again grew louder. They had only moments before they would be back on their feet. "We need to get to the heart of this city," Emily said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "We need to find the control center and deactivate the weapon, at least temporarily." Lily, Thomas, and the rest of the team followed her as they rushed through the city's labyrinthine corridors. The walls seemed to pulse with energy, as though the city itself was alive and aware of their movements. It wasn't just a city. It was a living monument to an ancient civilization, one that had once ruled the galaxy but had vanished without a trace. As they reached the central chamber of the city, they found a massive control panel embedded into the wall. It was covered in more of the strange symbols, and in the center, there was a glowing console that looked like it could deactivate the weapon. Emily approached it cautiously, her hands trembling as she studied the console. But just as she was about to reach out to activate it, a voice stopped her. "You cannot shut it down, Chosen One." Emily froze. The voice was not the Elders this time. It was something else, something far more powerful. The real test was only just beginning. The return of the Elders. The voice that echoed through the chamber was unlike anything Emily had heard before. It was deep, resonant, and filled with authority. It sent a shiver down her spine, and for a moment, she couldn't move. The team stood frozen, as though they were caught in the grip of something far beyond their understanding. "You cannot shut it down, Chosen One." The voice rang out again, its tone calm but heavy with an ancient power. Emily's heart raced. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to stay calm. "What do you want?" The walls around them began to glow, and a figure slowly materialized in front of them. Towering and regal. He appeared to be humanoid, but his features were unlike any human they had ever seen. His skin shimmered with a faint golden hue, and his eyes glowed with an ethereal light. He was dressed in ornate armor, ancient and adorned with symbols of power. "I am Zorith, one of the last of the Elders," the figure said, his voice echoing through the room. "You are the heir, the one who has awakened our legacy, but you are not ready to wield our power." The realization hit Emily like a wave. This being was not just any soldier or guardian. He was one of the elders, the ancient rulers of the galaxy. But he wasn't just here to protect the weapon. He was here to guide, or perhaps judge, her. The room seemed to grow colder, the air thick with the weight of centuries. Zoreth's eyes narrowed as he regarded Emily, his presence overwhelming. "You may have awakened the weapon," Zoreth continued, "but the true test has just begun. The weapon you seek to control is not merely a tool. It is the essence of the elders, our strength, our wisdom, and our fall. Only those with pure intent can control it. You must prove that you are worthy." Emily felt a knot form in her stomach. The weapon was more than just a physical force. It was a reflection of the elders themselves, a tool that could shape the galaxy, but only in the hands of someone who understood its full scope and responsibility. "I never asked for this," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never wanted to become the heir. I just wanted to understand the truth." Zoreth's eyes softened slightly, as though he understood the weight of her words. "You may not have asked for it, but the universe has chosen you. The weapon has recognized you. And now you must decide what to do with it." Emily took a step forward, her mind racing. The fate of the galaxy was in her hands, and she knew that if she failed, everything could fall into chaos. The Keepers, the unknown enemies lurking in the galaxy, all of them would stop at nothing to seize the power she had unlocked. "But how do I know I can control it?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. "What if I fail? What if I become like those who destroy the elders?" Zoreth's gaze hardened once more. "You must face your own darkness, chosen one. The weapon will reflect your true self. It will amplify your greatest strengths and your deepest flaws. If your heart is corrupted, if your intentions are impure, the weapon will consume you." The weight of his words settled in Emily's chest like a leaden stone. She was not only facing an ancient power, but also the possibility of destroying everything she held dear. But deep down, she knew she couldn't turn back now. The galaxy had already been changed, and there was no undoing what had been set in motion. Zoreth stepped aside, his presence filling the chamber with an almost tangible force. "The time has come, chosen one. You must either embrace the legacy of the elders or reject it." Emily glanced at her team. They were all watching her, their faces filled with uncertainty and fear. But Emily knew what she had to do. She couldn't let the Keepers, or anyone else, control the weapon. It was her responsibility now, to protect the galaxy from the destruction it could unleash. With a deep breath, Emily stepped forward, her hand hovering over the glowing console. She closed her eyes, focusing on the energy within the room. She could feel the weapon resonating with her, almost as if it were alive. The power was immense, but so was the danger. "I choose to protect," Emily said, her voice steady. "I choose to defend the galaxy from those who would destroy it." For a moment, nothing happened. The room was silent, and Emily felt as if time itself had frozen. Then, slowly, the glowing symbols around the console began to shift, aligning in a new pattern. The weapon's energy pulsed and hummed as it responded to her words. It was as if the galaxy itself had heard her decision. Zoreth's voice returned, softer this time. "You have chosen wisely, chosen one. The weapon will follow your command, but you must understand its cost. The power to change the galaxy is yours, but so is the responsibility. You must remain vigilant." The air in the room shifted as Zoreth began to fade, his form dissolving into the light. "We, the elders, have left the legacy of the galaxy in your hands. Protect it, for the darkness is always waiting." As Zoreth vanished completely, the room returned to its normal state, the glowing symbols fading as the weapon's energy stabilized. Emily's mind was still spinning, the weight of her decision pressing down on her. She had chosen to protect the galaxy, but now the real challenge was just beginning. The weapon was hers to command, But she knew that power came with consequences. The team gathered around her, their faces filled with a mix of awe and fear. "What now?" Thomas asked quietly. Emily took a deep breath, her mind finally clear. "Now, we go back to Earth. We need to prepare for what's coming. The Keepers won't be the last to come for the weapon. We'll need to be ready." As they turned to leave the ancient city, Emily couldn't help but wonder what the galaxy would look like after all of this. The elders had returned, and with them, the power to shape the future. But whether that future would be one of peace or war depended entirely on her. The galaxy was no longer the same, and neither was she. The battle for the elders' legacy had only just begun. The final decision. As Emily and her team made their way back to the ship, the weight of their journey and the responsibility she now carried pressed heavily on her. The ancient city faded behind them, but the path ahead was far from clear. They had unlocked a power unlike anything the galaxy had ever known, and with it came a terrifying truth. The weapon was a force that could reshape the galaxy. And now it was hers to command. The ship's engines hummed to life as they ascended from the surface of the long-forgotten city. The vastness of space stretched out before them, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling of something lurking just beyond the horizon. The Keepers would be back, but they weren't the only threat. There were others, ancient enemies who had watched for the moment when the weapon would be unleashed. And now that it had been awakened, everything had changed. As the ship entered hyperspace, Emily sat at the helm, staring at the stars. Her thoughts were a whirlwind of questions. Could she really control the weapon? Was she truly the heir the elders had chosen, or had they made a mistake? She felt the weight of their expectations, and her own doubts gnawed at her. "Emily." Lily's voice cut through the silence, pulling her out of her thoughts. "What happens now? The weapon is yours, but what do we do with it?" Emily turned to face her team, her expression serious. "We have to go back to Earth. The galaxy is a fragile place right now, and the weapon, it's too powerful. We need to protect it, and make sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands." Thomas spoke up, his voice hesitant. "But if we keep it hidden, how will we ever be able to use it if we need to defend ourselves? The Keepers know about it now, and if others find out, we'll be fighting a war on all fronts." Emily felt a pang of guilt. "I know, but we can't risk the weapon being used recklessly. If the wrong people, if anyone, controls it, they'll use it to conquer or destroy. We need time to figure out how to use it responsibly." Lily nodded, but her face was filled with concern. "And what about the elders' message? They said the galaxy would never forgive us. What if we're already too late?" Emily didn't have an answer. The elders had left her with a difficult choice: embrace their legacy and the power they had left behind, or reject it and risk the galaxy descending into chaos. And as much as she wanted to protect Earth, she couldn't shake the thought that she was now a part of something much bigger than herself. "I don't know if we can ever truly be ready for what's coming," Emily admitted. "But we have to try. The galaxy needs a new path forward, and if we don't take the first step, no one else will." The ship emerged from hyperspace, and Earth came into view, a blue and green jewel in the vastness of space. Emily's heart tightened as she looked at the planet she had once called home. Earth was no longer just a planet in the galaxy. It was now the center of a much larger, more dangerous game. As they landed on Earth, the team quickly moved to secure the weapon and prepare for the difficult road ahead. But even as they worked, a shadow loomed on the horizon. The Keepers would be coming soon, and they weren't the only ones searching for the weapon. Emily's thoughts drifted back to Zorath's words. "The weapon will obey, but only if your heart remains true." She had made the choice to protect, to defend the galaxy, but she wasn't sure if her heart was truly pure. She didn't know if she had the strength to control the weapon, or if it would consume her as it had consumed others in the past. But one thing was certain: the battle for the Elders' legacy had only just begun, and the fate of the galaxy rested on Emily's shoulders. With the weapon hidden on Earth, for now, Emily and her team began the difficult task of preparing for the war that was sure to come. The Keepers would be the first to arrive, but they wouldn't be the last. More powerful beings, more dangerous enemies were out there, waiting for the moment when the weapon would be theirs. Emily turned to her team, a sense of resolve filling her heart. She had made her decision, and she would see it through, no matter the cost. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together," Emily said, her voice steady and determined. "We'll protect the legacy of the Elders, and we'll protect Earth." As she looked out over the horizon, she couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy was on the edge of something monumental, a new chapter in its history, one that would either lead to salvation or destruction. And it was up to her to write the next page. The final decision had been made. Now, they would face the consequences.